Hey guys, Tactics Talk here. Gonna have another Warhammer video. It's gonna be a start of our Warhammer Wednesdays series. I'm going to start off by just talking primarily about just 7th edition and some of the do's and don'ts in building a list and building an army. Things that you just kind of need to know about this edition and things that kind of get are kind of confusing to some people. So what you have to understand when you're ever building a list that's going to be competitive, or you're trying to build a list that's sort of an all-comers list. I try to make an all-comers list be competitive because, well, if you're ever going to a tournament, you know, you're going to be as competitive as you possibly can be against almost every opponent you're going to be coming against. And also, when you're building an all-comers list that's competitive, it should be fairly fun to play with and against, because you're not going to be taking anything that's considered to be, you know, like super cheesy normally. And what I mean is, you're not going to be taking a list that's, a bunch of, for example, like the Wraith Knight, you know, a bunch of Eldar jet bikes and all that. Like, that's definitely a good list, but it's never going to be like some big. It's not something that I would recommend to anybody to take in a tournament series or something like that. Now, obviously, some tournaments don't have any kind of comp score, and it's 100% general. So obviously, there's exceptions to every rule. Not just in Warhammer, but also with life, there's exceptions with every rule. So keep that in mind. So keep what I'm about to say to you about 7th edition to that sort of standard. Like, everything I say definitely has an exception. I'm not going to get into all those exceptions, but just be aware that they are there. So what you want to consider when making a 7th edition list. Now, we're going to assume that you're playing, you know, a reasonable sized points game, so anywhere between 1250 to 1850 points. This system will typically work for you, or work most of the time. The biggest thing you want to do is you want to basically take a look at your entire look at what you want in your army, and look at what your army is. Now, not every army is built the same. Not every army can take the same things. But typically, no matter what army you're playing, each unit is usually better at a certain task than another unit. Usually, like, you'll have a unit that's sort of better geared to fighting armor versus fighting infantry, and then you'll have a unit that's better geared to fighting infantry opposed to armor. And then you kind of got some middle in-between units that can kind of do a little bit of both. And they're not great at doing both, but they can do both things fairly decently, but nothing the best. So those are the kind of three units that you want to look at. In my opinion, it's good to bring, you know, maybe 2 units of anti-infantry, 2 units of anti-armor, and then all of the rest of your army should be the multi-purpose units. Typically, the multi-purpose units are like your troops that are objective secured units most of the time. Not always, though. Because it depends on the army you're playing, right? So what I'm trying to say here is, so basically when you're building your army, so if you can make a unit multi-purpose by the means of taking just that extra upgrade that normally you don't take, because you're like, well, he's never going to need to do that because he's meant to kill armor. Well, that's true. He's not always going to need, you know, the model's not going to need that upgrade to take out infantry. So, for example, if you're playing Space Marines and you're taking a Devastator squad, you probably wouldn't consider taking a Power Sword or a Power Fist on your Sergeant, because you're like, well, they're going to be so far away from everything that there's nothing he's going to be able to fight, and it's kind of pointless. And you know what? You're probably right. You're probably never going to need that Power Fist. You're never going to need that Power Sword on him because, well, first of all, close combat's sort of dead in this edition. And second of all, they'd have to go through all my other units to make it there. So be careful about what you upgrade. You're not necessarily going to need to upgrade those units to be multi-purpose. The units that are tasked with the long-range fire support, you know, typically won't need to have, a Power Fist, etc. Now, if it's the case of Space Marines, I think that taking a Melta Bomb for 5 points is worth its weight in gold. Just in case, you know, there's a Dreadnought that drops in next to you and you get in close combat with it, at least you have a Melta Bomb, so you have that hope. of popping it with one shot, which I've done before. So you're going to lose a bunch of Space Marines when they charge you, but the fact that you have that melt-a-bomb, it kind of gives you that sort of that threat. And when your opponent gets there, he's like, oh, you have a melt-a-bomb? And you're like, yeah. And it's like, oh, okay. So, you know that feeling you get when you're playing Warhammer and you're like, oh, I just got charged with this thing, I have literally no hope? That 5 points is a hell of a lot of hope, because, yeah, you're only going to hit on a 4, but you're going to get 2d6 to pen it, and then you're going to get, on a 5 or 6, you could just blow it up. It could just go boom. And you did an Ironclad Dreadnought. Ironclad Dreadnought Space Marines can't even hurt with their Kraken raids, so it's like, ah, crap. Like, what am I supposed to do? I mean, obviously, hopefully you killed it with shooting. This Devastator unit was able to kill it with the shooting before it got to you, but say 2 or 3 drop pods came in, all of a sudden it's like, well, you can't kill 2 or 3 drop, you can only fire 1 target for the most part, so you're not really going to be able to do that, right? So taking the Melt-A-Bomb, knowing what upgrades to take on the unit is kind of like the biggest learning curve in Warhammer, really. Another good example would be, say you have a unit of Dark Eldar Warriors, a troop for this instance. Dark Eldar Warriors are great for their Venom pistol, or their Splitter pistols. So they're really good at killing infantry. They're very good at killing monstrous creatures. What they can't do is they can't hurt armor. Armor really can't do much for them. Typically, if you're in a situation, normally I put my if I play Dark Eldar, I put mine in a Venom just to further improve their anti-infantry abilities, because you get just those extra shots, right? Now there is an argument to say to take a Raider, because a Raider is definitely a good option that lots of time gets overlooked, because, well, people say, oh, well, the Venom, you just get way more shots, it's just cheaper, you don't have to take as many warriors, blah, 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 which is true. But the thing is that you still have with the Raider, instead of the Venom, you could take a Dark Lance, and having an extra Dark Lance can really make that unit now much more useful. It has more versatility, right? Like I don't know how many times I've brought in Eldar Warriors to a tournament in a Venom, and really it just moves around and gets objectives and can't even shoot, because there is literally no targets for it to fire at for 2 or 3 turns. And that's definitely an unfortunate thing, because they have no purpose, right? Like, I've played against fully mechanized armies, and it's like, damn, my Venoms with my Warriors in it really can't do anything until I pop those transports. And maybe he's only got 10 infantry. Maybe he's only got 2 units of 5 Space Marines inside, Razorbacks, and that's his army, right? Like, that's his troops. It's like, crap, these Warriors are pretty much 100% useless in this game, because all they can do is go and get objectives, and they're not really durable enough to just sit on there, and hold it, right? And like, they're going to get blown off. Now, normally they'll just get ignored in this situation because they're not a threat to your opponent, and typically their objectives secured, so they're still good at doing that job. But for example, like, all you need to do is take literally 15 points in upgrades, and all of a sudden you got haywire grenades on your Warriors, which I know it's not the greatest thing, but the fact is if he parks an objective secured Razorback, for example, on an objective, there is literally nothing you can do to get rid of that Razorback if all you have left is like your Warriors. Like, you can charge it, and you're only still strength 3 until turn 4 when you get Furious Charge to actually glance the back of the vehicle. But if you have that haywire grenade, you have now a lot of chances to wreck it. I mean, you can take a whole point off a turn, essentially, as long as you can hit it. And that's literally just a 5-point upgrade. So that's what I mean about making that unit multi-purpose, if it's able to. I'll give you one last final example of what I mean. So the last one will be, let's say it's going to be a unit of, we'll probably use Space Marines here. Let's say it's a tactical squad, just a tactical squad, because this can be applied across all Space Marines, essentially. Let's say you have a tactical squad of Space Marines, and you take them designed to take out, let's say, armor. So let's say they're designed to take out armor. You took them all with you took them with a melt-a-gun and, I don't know can you take 2 melt-a-guns? Let's say you can. So let's say you took 2 melt-a-guns on your Space Marines and put them in a Rhino. Let's say that's what you did. And then you're going to have that Rhino go up the field and go get objectives while hunting vehicles. Sounds like a good idea to me. Now you look at your sergeant, right? So your sergeant's like an extra 10 points to take to upgrade him. Whether you do that or not, I'm not sure. Sometimes you don't have to do that to take the upgrades, but sometimes you do. Sometimes that's an extra little bit of attack, but you do get the extra attack, whatever. So then you look at what you can take. You know, you can take a power weapon, you can take melta bombs, you can take combi weapons, you can take all kinds of stuff. Lots of people like to opt to take the combi weapon, and it is a good choice to have the extra melta or the extra flamer or the extra whatever weapon you wanted to have. But I always opt to take things like power swords, storm shields, things like that. And the reason why is because say you come across a unit that is designed to kill infantry very well. So let's say you come across a big unit of like incubi or something like that, right? Incubi are designed to just tear Space Marines to pieces. Like they will just eat you alive. And they have a pretty decent armor save. They have a 3-up armor save, but their low toughness, their toughness 3. So, you know, this is kind of like a best case scenario. Not best case scenario, but this is probably a worst case scenario actually if you're playing Space Marines and you see incubi charging your unit of 10 tactical Marines. Those tactical Marines are going to get destroyed normally. And they still will get destroyed. But if you took just that extra 10 or 15 point power weapon for the extra power weapon attacks on your sergeant, for example, and then you decided to take, you know, something like a storm shield or whatnot, you'd be surprised on how far that storm shield can go. Now, not every time will it help you, and not every time will it work for you. But if you take a storm shield on your sergeant, he's got all of a sudden a 3-up of vulnerable save. Now all of a sudden, you know, he can be used in all kinds of different ways. He can be used up front to take, you know, plasma gunshots. If, like, you know, you're getting shot at by plasma, he can be used to accept a challenge from the incubi if the incubi have a character. If they don't have a character, then he can just soak up a few wounds here and there. Because you got to remember, like, the incubi are hitting on 3s, they're wounding on 4s. And they're getting, depending on the unit size, if there's only 5 of them, for example, and they're charging into a big unit of 8 or 7 of your Space Marines, yeah, they're probably going to kill like 5 of those Space Marines. But if you had that Storm Shield there, he's probably only going to kill, well, he's probably going to kill the Storm Shield because you're probably going to take the saves until he dies. But the fact is, you're going to be taking at least 3 or 4 less casualties, which essentially means that he's just going to be stuck there for another turn. He's not going to get his bonus attacks for charging next turn, and you're going to be taking out maybe 1 or 2 of them back because you're still wounding him on 3s, hitting him on 4s. He's got a 3-up save, but still, forcing him to take, you know, 5 or 6 saves is still a chance that you might kill 1 or 2 of them. All of a sudden, that unit of 5 is now a unit of 2 or 3 or 2 even. And then he attacks back with 4 attacks. You know, he's going to miss with a couple of them. He's going to wound with only a couple of them. And then, again, you're still there fighting back. You actually have a fighting chance because you had that Storm Shield in there to give you that extra chance of surviving. Now, this isn't going to work every time because, remember, it's dice, right? Dice won't always go your way. But the fact that you're adding numbers dice to where there was no dice is a big deal. So whenever you can get a chance to throw dice at stuff that you couldn't throw dice at normally, that's usually a good upgrade to consider. Now, of course, if you're playing an army and you can't fit the storm shields in, like, I'm not saying auto-include these storm shields, I'm just saying take them into consideration when you're building your army. Take them into consideration when you're finished building. What I normally do is I build my army. I take all my units, upgrade them with the mandatory upgrades that I need them to have to do all their different tasks, and then I look at how many points I have left over. Typically, I have 100 or 200 points left over, just in like free stuff I can do. Usually, it's only around 80 to 150 normally, though. Once I'm at that point, then I go, okay, now really, what upgrades can I take to take my units above and beyond so they can all do different things? Now, there's an argument to take an additional unit if you can fit an additional unit in there, but I find if you have units that don't have enough upgrades, you know, they end up having units that are just useless in some games, right? Like, you don't want to have a game where it's like, oh, I have this anti-infantry unit and it has like flamers and bolters, and then it's like, oh, I'm playing against tons of armor. This isn't going to be good. There's going to be no purpose for this unit. You know, let's say I have this unit of fire dragons, or for example, and I'm like, oh, I'm playing against orcs. I didn't take the flamer E. Okay. You have one truck. Oh, yeah, so this is gonna suck. Like, I mean, obviously they might be able to be tasked with something else, but all of a sudden your specialized unit can't really destroy, a bunch of boys. Like, he's not, you can't really use those fire dragons to any kind of full potential anymore. Which is why people sort of laugh at me when I say I take the dragons with flamer. It's worth it. Like, it's definitely worth it, considering, right? I mean, what if you come against Sconce? What if you come against, all these other things? Yeah, you're going to lose a melt-a-shot, but what, 5 melt-a-shots? If you put them in a Falcon, for example, you can take 6 fire dragons, 1 with a flamer, and then 5 with, without. Was that not enough? Like, 5 melt-a-guns that are ballistic skill 5, basically, now, with assured destruction, that's not enough for you? I don't know. I think you're pretty much destroying whatever you decided to shoot at, because you're probably hitting, and you're most likely penning, so... yeah, and then you get to add 1 to your dice result, so you only need a 4+ to wreck it, or to make it explode. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the vehicle is destroyed. Even if you only glanced it, you're probably going to cause 2 or 3 glances, which is still enough, again, to wreck it. So, I mean, the flamer, yes, won't always get used, but still, think about this. You still have melt-a-bombs on all of them, right? So, I mean, like, if you did need to fight, if you got charged by something, the melt-a-guns are kind of useless, right? The melt-a-guns against, like, let's say a monstrous creature that just charged you, really, it makes no difference, right? The flamer, yeah, at least you got to Overwatch, right, with a D3 flamer shot, right? So, I mean, say the unit of fire dragons, like, what kills fire dragons? Well, people charge them, right? Well, if you have a flamer in there, it's kind of like, oh shit, you have a flamer? It's like, yeah, heavy flamer, actually. It's like, oh, you might kill like 2 or 3 of my guys, and then I all of a sudden can't make the charge. It's like, yeah, you actually have that threat. So it's kind of like, just these little things that sometimes seem silly to take, actually can change the outcome of what they are used for. And it can also make units be able to adapt to situations that they're normally not good at doing. And the fact that you're able to make your army flexible like this, you're going to be able to take on basically any opponent that decides to come in front of you. I remember lots of times when I used to build lists that were, I didn't have any multi-purpose lists. Every unit had like a task, right? Every unit was like good at doing this thing, right? And then all of a sudden I played against, somebody who had only armor or only infantry, and it's like, I only have 2 units that are really good at killing infantry. And then he kills those 2 units. And then really, what are you stuck with? You're stuck with a bunch of shit that just can't do anything against your opponent. You're going to be killing 2 or 3 models. You're not going to be having fun because you really can't compete anymore, right? You've just lost both of your anti-infantry units, and all you have is a bunch of anti-armor and long-range firepower. And as soon as he gets to you, it's pretty much over. And realistically, he's going to get to you because you're just not going to be able to cause enough damage to his units. So I hope that all sort of makes sense as a basic rule of thumb when building lists. That's how I attack every list I ever build. And I think if you played Warhammer long enough, you know exactly what I mean when, you come across an opponent where it's like, shit, I only have really 2 units to threaten you with, or maybe even sometimes only 1 unit to threaten you with, and the rest of my units are kind of just completely useless against you. Like, they're just not going to be able to do anything. So as soon as you kill that big unit, or that unit of mine that, can destroy, your big threats, I really have nothing left to threaten you with. And then the game becomes very simple for you. All you have to do is basically just go where you need to go, get the objectives you need to get, and I'm basically just now trying to move to my objectives and while not losing my units that, can't die, essentially. So I hope that sort of all makes sense to most of you guys. I mean, obviously some people are going to disagree, people are going to build the lists whatever the way they want, but, we also didn't talk about any objectives secured in transports. They're both king as well. Objectives secured with transports, definitely worth it. A major big thumbs up for me. Transports are very highly underrated. Rhinos are highly underrated. Razorbacks are highly underrated. All the transports that can take troops that are objective secured, they're all good. There's not a single bad one out there. All of them are just extremely useful. Trucks are good. Wave serpents are good. Rhinos are good. Chimeras are good. All the different transports, all the different various armies. Raiders are good. Venoms are good. All the transports. I don't think there's a single bad transport out there. They're all amazing. Even Falcons are good in their own right. So yeah, that's basically it for, basic general overview of list building. Now I want to kind of this might be sort of a two-part video. This part of the video is going to be going into sort of the don'ts and do's of 40K 7th edition. I'm going to start off with the don'ts. So don't take a flyer. Just don't do it. I understand people are going to disagree with me and be like, what do you mean? Helldrakes are amazing. What do you mean? My Crimson Hunter just takes out so much armor, it's almost guaranteed the turn to come in to destroy something. Yeah, you're probably right. It probably will. And yeah, the Helldrake is pretty damn nice. So these are some of the things that are exceptions to the rules. But for the most part, you want to avoid flyers. You want to avoid flyers for a couple different reasons. A smart opponent will not take a flyer, normally. Any game that I've ever lost in a tournament is because they don't have a flyer. Think about it this way. You're paying points for models and units to be on the table to do a job for you. As soon as that model doesn't have the option of deploying on the table as one of the main options, and you're forced to take it in reserve, you all of a sudden have a unit now that is not getting its points back. You are relying now, or hoping that you roll a 3+ on a dice to then bring that unit in to serve a task, serve a purpose. Now, the problem is, if you're playing against a smart opponent, they probably don't necessarily have anti-flyer, but the thing is that flyer, when it comes in, it has to achieve the task it's meant to do that turn. So what I mean is, if it comes in and all of a sudden it's trying to hunt armor, if it comes in and it doesn't kill any armor, all of a sudden it's like, well, I really didn't do what I was needed to do, and I really didn't get anywhere near my points back. And after that, you're pretty much just flying around trying to just find some target in the hope that you can shoot it at full ballistic skill that you haven't jinked and he hasn't fired at you yet. A perfect example is the Dark Eldar Razorwing. Now the Razorwing is definitely a decent flyer. It's 130 points, so it's not too expensive. But it's got these monoscythe missiles, right? And it's got Dark Lances or Disintegrator Cannons, depending on which way you took it. Now normally people take Dark Lances, but whatever. Basically, it's kind of a mixed flyer. It can kind of do both things, so it's got some merit that it can do anti-armor and anti-infantry, but the problem is when it comes on, you're almost forced to fire those missiles. All your missiles, not the Dark Lances. And the reason being is, if he even fires at you with, let's say, even 10 bolter shots, you're going to have to jink. Because even if 1 or 2 of them hit, you're probably taking a hull point. If Necrons are there and Necrons are firing at you, again, you're going to have to jink almost always. Otherwise, you're basically going to be losing that flyer, or it's going to be taking a lot of damage. And then once you've jinked, all of a sudden you can't fire these nice big large blast missiles, and you're basically forced to fire just your Dark Lances at snapfire, or your Disintegrator Cannons at snapfire. Now, this is why you only have really 1 turn to use the flyer. After it gets in, normally you're going to be forced to jink by him just firing stuff into it. Now you don't have to jink, obviously you can risk it, but every time someone opts to not jink, I always either cause lots of damage to it, or I stun or shake it anyway, and all of a sudden snap firing anyway, so you might as well just jinked and saved you the hull point. But, it all depends, right? After that, next turn, it now has to figure out where to go to shoot its normally snap firing weapons at, and all of a sudden, it's not really being very useful, right? You have a 130 point basically anchor attached to your side that you're trying to get points with and try and maneuver in a way to get to it. Now, most people can see where the flyer is. The easiest way to counter a flyer is just move closer to the flyer. So if you're playing a very mobile army, he's going to just, again, fly underneath your flyer, or, right next to your flyer, where you're not going to be able to shoot the targets that are important at the current point in time. Because yes, you could take out his back fire support, but if it's like, say it comes in on turn 3 or 4, and there's a whole bunch of objectives that are sitting there that are objective secure, you might not be able to even get those objectives. You might not even be able to shoot him with that objectives with that flyer to get him off of it. And that's a big problem, right? Because every turn you're going to have high priority targets that need to sort of die. And the odds of that flyer being in position to fire that high priority target is just so low that it's just not worth it. That extra 130 points could have went towards, you know, an extra Ravager. You know, it could have gone towards, you know, an extra unit of Scourges with a whole bunch of Dark Lances or Heat Lances. It could have gone towards, you know, a unit of Jet Bikes. It could have gone towards all these other things that could have done those tasks much easier and been useful every single turn until they're dead. Now, obviously, people say, "Oh, well, people had to fire stuff to make me jink at my model." Yeah, but people are going to fire stuff at your models regardless of where they are. I mean, if I'm not firing at your flyer, it's probably because next turn it's not going to be in a position that's threatening anything I care about at that current time. Oh, you're going to be shooting at my scouts next turn? Congratulations, I don't give a shit. Go ahead, shoot my fucking scouts. I really don't care. You know, shoot your Dark Lances or your Disintegrator Cannons. You might kill them all, you might not kill any. Who cares? They're not important to this game at this particular time. So, you know, it's why flyers are not really usable in competitive play. Again, there's obviously exceptions to every rule, just like I said. So don't take that, you know, personally. If you like certain flyers and you think that they do work for you, if they work for you, go ahead, great, use them. If they're working for you in your meta against your friends and stuff, I'm not saying, you know, stop using your flyers and go out and buy some different shit. I'm just saying, competitively speaking, when you're building a balanced list that's going to be at a tournament taking an all-comers list, these are things you have to just take into consideration. So the next thing is you want to consider psychic powers. Psychic powers are something that I typically just stay out of. Psychic powers are just far too random and unreliable in order to work in a competitive scene. And realistically, the only time I ever really use psychic powers is if it's a character that sort of does something else, or maybe he has some sort of special other ability, like maybe he makes the unit fearless. For example, if I'm taking the Shadow Seer because I want some fearless Harlequins, for example, you know, he's a level 1 Psyker. You know what? I'll just take him with Psychic Shriek and maybe hope for invisibility, whatever. But if I'm not really relying on those abilities, right? I'm really just hoping that I get something, and if it goes off, great. If it doesn't, I'm not going to sweat it. Like, it's not something I was planning on using. It works sort of the same way with every army you sort of look at. I mean, obviously there's exceptions. There's formations that make some psychic powers just crazy. Like there's Typhus and whatever, and he can take his formation of librarians and all this and whatever. So yeah, there's definitely all kinds of different things you can do to make them work with certain formations. However, most tournaments do not allow multiples of formations, so you might not even be able to take that formation in conjunction with your normal all-comers list set or whatever it is. And also some just straight up don't allow formations at all, and CAD is the only option. And, you know, that's just the way it is. Or it's only a maximum of 2 formations, so, you know, you might only really have the option of taking, that would be your only formation, plus your regular CAD, you know what I mean? So, or if you're taking, for example, the Gladius Strike Force, excuse me, the Gladius Strike Force is great, but it definitely lacks some things. You need to have, you know, some other things in there for it to be, you know, above and beyond. And if you're taking the Psychers, I mean, it's not a terrible idea, but again, you know, it's something I wouldn't really normally do, because, you know, you could just fail to cast stuff. You know, here's the reason why, really, guys. So think about it this way: psychic powers, you need a 4+ to harness the charge, right? You need to roll randomly on the chart to get a power that hopefully is useful to you in a situation in the game you're playing. Then, after you've rolled your psychic powers, you've rolled to cast it, now he gets his chance to deny the witch. So now you're going against the barrier that he put up to try and stop the power from even happening. Once you've done that, then finally, if it's a blessing or malediction, typically it's on there and you're good. But if it's a witchfire power of any kind, you still need to roll to hit. And then if it does damage, then you need to roll the wound. And then after that, then he gets his saves. So you're looking at like a wall of like 9 barriers here in order for your power to be even somewhat successful against the target. You know, versus when you just shoot the gun at somebody, it's like, okay, you roll a hit, you roll the wound, he rolls his saves. Well, you're doing all those 3 things still with psychic powers, except you have these other 2 barriers to go through in order for it to happen. Which, in my opinion, really makes psychic powers not worth it. Like, you have to think that why am I having these other two barriers that I'm giving myself these chances of failure when I can just eliminate them altogether by just taking more weapons? You know what I mean? Or a different unit that can take different weapons. You know what I mean? It just makes no sense. And that's just really all what you have to work with, what it's all about, really. There's not really much more to say about the psychic powers. I'm not going to go into details of all the different examples. Obviously, there's some psychic powers that are very good, such as invisibility. I obviously know that like there's good psychic powers. I'm not saying there isn't. There's some good ones that are from different books, the various books. But realistically, again, if you're playing in a competitive situation, psychic powers, I take them very sparingly. I only take them if I'm taking them because there's a unit, like for example, with my Harlequins or my Eldar, I need to take a Farseer. Farseers, yes, Farseers definitely are a little bit of an example or exception to the rule because they have the ability to reroll their psychic test. Because the Eldar psychic powers are extremely powerful. You know, Guide's very good, Doom's very good, Eldritch Storm is amazing now. You know, there's a lot of good psychic powers. Fortune's amazing. You know, there's only 2, I think, powers in that book that aren't very good. All the rest of the powers on that chart are very, very good. So, you know, Executioner's not very good and Mind War's meh. But for the most part, all those other powers are very, very good. They're very useful. You can make them work. And the fact that you can take a Farseer on a jet bike as well, this kind of takes him above and beyond. And for 100 points, you know, a level 3 for 100 points, you really can't argue, right? So, you know, obviously there's exceptions to all these rules, but for the most part, guys, you want to basically stay clear of them. So, if it's an exception to the rule, it's quite obvious normally that it's an exception to the rule. So, again, when you look at the Farseer and you're like, wow, he's a level 3, he only costs 100 points, and the Eldar powers do what? Okay, well, no matter what power I get, I'm going to be happy, right? Because you're going to have essentially 4 powers. So no matter what, you're getting Guide. So all of a sudden, Guide, it's like, all right, well, Guide's awesome. There's really nothing, you know, terrible about Guide. And, you know, they can take Divination. So you could just take 1 point into Divination to take the Primaris, and then you could just take 2 points into the Eldar powers to take Guide. So all of a sudden, you can be guiding 2 units. And then the third power is just kind of a bonus. So twin linking 2 units of your army, you know, becomes very nice. If, for example, if you put them with, like, you know, 2 units of Warwalkers and they're not, that are near him, you can kind of just sit them safely behind some cover and just be like, you know, guide the Warwalkers, guide the Fire Prisms, guide the Falcons, guide the whatever. Like, all of a sudden, your Falcons and your Fire Prisms become all twin linked, and it's just like, wow, all right, now that's some serious shit. Like, you know, you can do a lot more damage output because of it, right? So there's an example where how you can use psychic powers effectively, but again, you know, there is a lot of different things. Like, you know, there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't. There's more reasons why you shouldn't take psychic powers than you should take psychic powers. Is all I'm saying. At least coming from a competitive standpoint, because if you're taking psychic powers in the hopes that it's going to do this big job for me, it really won't. Psychic powers are kind of just there for like a nice thing. It's like, oh, does it happen? Yeah, it does. Okay, bonus, right? Not like, oh shit, I didn't get it. I guess I'm not winning this game. You know, that's not what you want to be doing with your psychic powers. That's not how you should be treating your psychic powers. So that's pretty much all there is to say about the don'ts. I mean, there's a few other things you want to avoid in 40k, but for the most part, everything else is pretty solid. Those are just 2 of the things that I think are the problems with 40k right now. You know, there's definitely flyers and psychic powers were nerfed, in my opinion, down to the ground. Like, even in 6th edition, psychic powers were better. They just were. The fact that you could, the fact that you could, oh my gosh, why can't I put my words together today? The fact that you could just pass a leadership test to cast your power, you know, was much, much easier than just having to roll this static 4+, you know, and the fact is that Eldar used to get things to help them reroll and stuff like that. They were leadership 10, the odds of failing were so low, you know, now that you have basically a 50-50 chance to roll a 4+, your chances of success are much, much worse. So keep all that in sort of mind. I hope this information was useful to you guys. Obviously some people are going to disagree with me and say, hey, I've been using Psychic Powers, forever, and they've been great for me, and I've been using flyers and they're working out great for me. Great. If they're working for you guys, I would never tell anybody to say stop using something because I don't use them. You know what I mean? That's just silly. I think that's just being ignorant and silly. Obviously, there's definitely merit to every unit. Like, if you like a model because you love the model, buy the model. Like, who cares? Don't listen to anything that anyone tells you, right? Just buy models that you think look cool, that you want to play with, and play with them. You can definitely make almost anything work, even in a competitive environment. You can make most armies work around a certain model if that's your plan. So what I'm saying is, if you love flyers, let's say you want to play Dark Eldar because you want to play with 2 bombers and 3 Void Raven and 6 Void Ravens because or Razor Wings, sorry, because you can with their formation. Go for it. Like, you can definitely do it. Just be aware that you have to do something about getting those guys in reliably, right? So if you can get them in reliably, they can be very useful. But you're gonna have that flying circus, so now he's gonna be forcing to snap fire at you. You're gonna have he's gonna have a lot harder time dealing with you. Now you're not gonna be able to fire all your Void Ravens and all your Razor Wings every turn at the targets they're gonna want to fire at, but at least you can have them in different positions where he can't hide, right? So again, this is sort of spammy and kind of cheesy in my opinion, but the thing is that, you can make it work, right? All you need to do to really ensure that you're getting these models in when you need them, you take a comms relay to reroll your reserve rolls, or you ally in some Eldar, take a Crimson Hunter to even further better the flyer list, and take an Otark so you can +1 his rolls. That's another way of getting it in. However you feel that, it's going to work for you. Those army lists can work. They can be fun to build. Like, if you just want to paint a bunch of the flyers and you wanted to do that, I would say, yeah, it's a cool army. You'll have fun with it. You're probably going to lose most of your games. I would probably still say if you win, it'd be hard to win against an experienced good player. But I'm not saying you can't win, because again, this is a dice game, right? Anything can happen with dice. And as much as people say, oh, well, you can't blame the dice, you can blame the dice. Trust me, you can. I've been playing for 20 years, and I have seen dice just basically ruin the game. I'll give you an example. I was playing against my buddy. He's playing as guard. He was playing with Pask. He's got preferred enemy with +6 skill 4. He rolled to shoot my big unit, or my unit of Penitent Engines, which is essentially a bunch of dreadnoughts. If you don't know what Penitent Engines, it's the sister's dreadnought, essentially. And he rolled, I think, 10 or 12 twos. So 10 or 12 twos, which means, he has preferred enemy, so he can't re-roll those twos plus skill 4, so he just missed. He didn't roll a single one. Or no, he rolled a couple ones too. I think he rolled 2 or 3 ones. He re-rolled those, and again, they were 1s and 2s that just missed. So out of his 20 shots, I think he hit with 6 of them. Then he rolled to do his penetrations, not a single pen. So, he should have probably wrecked 2 of them, if not all of them, with those shots. And he didn't get a single point of damage. So dice can be a big problem, right? Dice can be the worst thing and the best thing about this game, right? And that's one of the pros and cons of playing just Warhammer and miniature war games in general that use dice. The fact that you're at the mercy of them. There is those times where you can just roll 10 ones. And, there is that time where your opponent's not going to miss a single shot. And he's going to be firing, 30 wounds into you. And you're just like, holy crap, how did you wound with every single dice? And it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen once in a while. And there's really nothing you can do about it, right? Now, hopefully it averages out throughout the course of the game. And, his luck runs out. But I've had games where, someone just got luck up their ass, and it's just, every roll is just ungodly. It's like, holy shit. You haven't failed a single jinx save, you haven't failed a single shot, you've penned me every time, and I've just got wiped off the board in 3 turns, and I killed literally maybe 2 models. And it was like, well, that was no fun. So, no matter what those games can happen, So with all this planning and tactics, it can all just go to shit because of bad dice rolls. And again, it can all go to be great because of good dice rolls. If it's just the way it is, right? But for the most part, out of most of your games, like I'd say that's only going to happen in 1 in every 10 games. The rest of your games are going to be normally pretty standard. And typically when I play with this army, with a balanced army, following these rules, following these kind of guidelines that I've kind of set up for myself, and it may work for you as well. Even if you just take a couple of things from what I've told you guys here, and apply them to sort of your tactics and your list building plans, you'll probably end up being a little bit more successful. Especially when it comes to the point where I was making about, the fact that you need to have units to be able to do multiple tasks, even though they're not great at doing it by the means of upgrades. So that's all I really wanted to say for this first episode, guys. I hope it didn't come out super negative. I hope that you guys got something from here. And if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Until then, guys, have fun with your hobby, and war game on.